All right, so I bought this deal from. I bought a bunch of computers in Seattle, California, and Phoenix, and so I flew up to Seattle, got a Penske, and picked them up there. Drove down to California, picked them up there. Drove across to Phoenix, picked them up there, and then back to Texas. So, this was a 4 or 5 day thing. And, I made some good money on that deal. And then comes along this guy named Alan, and he comes around sometime in 2017, and I guess he finds me through eBay. I think there were some eBay messages. I was selling the motherboards out of the computers, and I think that's how he found me. And so he messaged me about it and wanting to work together and stuff. And I don't know if I ignored him in eBay messages or just declined it in eBay messages, told him I wasn't interested. But the persistence kept up. It wasn't something I was trying to go out and do, and it wasn't something I needed to do because I was doing fine on my own. But he kept persisting, and so eventually I gave in, even though I shouldn't have. So eventually I agree, all right, I'll work with you. It was I didn't understand that it was wrong, that it was illegal or wrong. There's a bunch of companies, competing construction companies, that work together on projects all the time. And so that's just how I saw it, is we were working together on this project. And he had already had an agreement with another guy, I think in Pennsylvania, whose name was Igor. And he already had an agreement, and so we weren't going to bid on anything on the East Coast until, unless Igor says he was tapped out and wasn't going to spend any more, and then we could. And so for me, I was willing to spend more than any of these more than any of these guys. The profit was there. I did this for a living. There was still money to be made in all these computers. So a lot of times I ended up buying computers without them. So, don't remember the exact numbers. I do know that I probably purchased total during 2017, 2018 from GSA, probably purchased about $65,000 worth of computer equipment. And I think probably together, we probably only purchased about $7,500 worth of equipment. So that's the volume of commerce that we did. So during all this, there's another bidder that kind of steps in, because there were some small lots in Wisconsin that we didn't buy because they were 4 or 5 computers or something. Just didn't make sense for us to buy it. So there was another guy in Wisconsin that ended up buying those, and at that point he too realized what was in the computers, and so then he started bidding on them all across the US as well. And so then Alan decided to contact that guy too and try and work out a deal. So he just keeps getting more and more people involved in this. So that person in Wisconsin told him that he was going to work with him, and instead he ended up going to the GSA Office of the Inspector General, and he became an informant for them, and he made and recorded phone calls to both Igor and Alan, and I never answered the phone when he called because I was like, I don't need to talk to him, like, I don't know him, haven't talked to him, there's no reason he should be calling me. So anytime that Wisconsin number called, I would not answer it. I would not talk to him. But he ended up recording the calls on those other ones, but they didn't have any phone calls of me talking to him because I never talked to him. So I think that probably went on for 4 to 6 months of him being their informant. So that puts us in to May of 2018. So this is where it starts getting fun. All right, I'm sitting on the toilet taking a dump, 6:30 in the morning. Kids are getting ready for school, and there's a knock on the door, and it's I think initially a sheriff is there, and then some GSA guys, and my brother-in-law was living with us at the time, and he had been in some trouble with the law before and stuff, so he's like, man, what'd I do? Well, like, why are you coming here for me? But it wasn't for him, it was for me, obviously. So my wife answers the door, and they ask for me, and she's like, hold on, let me get him. And she came in and told me that, hey, there's a bunch of cops at the door for you. I was like, what? So I was like, okay. So I kind of hurried up and finished what I needed to, and then went to the door. My wife had asked him what it's for, and he's like, he'll know what it's for. And I got to the door, and I was like, I don't have any idea what it's for. He's like, do you know this guy? And mentioned Alan's name, and I was like, yeah. Well, it's about what y'all been doing or something like that. I don't remember a whole lot of it, but he kind of I think patted me down a little bit, made sure I didn't have any weapons and whatnot, and then they came in and initiated a search of the house and my truck, and really we're only looking for data devices. So they had a warrant for any computers that I might have bid on the government equipment on. And so let me tell you how many people were there. So I told you before, this was like over, I spent like $70,000 or $65,000 with them. We worked together on like $7,500 of it. This morning in May, there was 2 computer forensics people down from Washington, D.C. There were, I think, 3 Dallas GSA OIG agents there, and then the agent that flew down from Chicago, who was one of the main agents on the case. So those 6 people were here for me and to do my search warrant. Simultaneously, there were people at Alan and Igor's same morning issuing the search warrant there. So there were 6 people for me over, like I said, $65,000, of which most of that wasn't even working together with them. So they came in, and they had my phone because it was part of the warrant, and in the warrant it specified by force, they could make me open the phone or whatnot. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I didn't think I had anything to hide. And so while they're copying my phone, it takes forever, and my laptop and all that, they asked me to sit and talk with them. And at no point was I read my Miranda rights, and they kept mentioning, though, that I could go if I wanted to, and I had never been in trouble with the law like this before, and so I did not understand what that meant. But that meant, like, I did not need to talk to them. But I sat there and talked to them at the kitchen table for probably 2 or 3 hours without representation from a lawyer and without knowing that I needed a lawyer. And one of the ladies from Dallas is like, oh, usually it's just going to be a slap on the wrist. It'll be a fine and whatnot. But it was not a fine. They would not do anything but a felony. So this time, I think it was Trump that had cut a bunch of funding. Well, I don't know that they cut a bunch of funding. What happened was a bunch of people in the Department of Justice, their antitrust division, were getting cut. I don't know if it was because budget or what, but I think they lost a third of their workforce. And so they were really wanting to get numbers up at all means possible. So throughout all of this, when it was good for them, when it was good for the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, they would issue press releases. So they issued press release when, I think when I was indicted maybe, or when I pled. So I think they issued 2 press releases on me. The one they failed to, the time they failed to do a press release was at sentencing, because that didn't look good for them. But the other 2 looked good for them, so they went ahead and issued press releases then. So anyways, I'm sitting there talking to them for hours, asking me questions, and finally they're done at the house, and they had a search warrant for my business also. Business listed the wrong address though, because I had moved about 6 months before, and so they, on the search warrant, had the wrong address. And they say, well, we can do it the easy way or the hard way. We can call and get a new search warrant, or you can go ahead and voluntarily give us permission to search. And I said, well, I don't have anything to hide, so I'll go ahead and let you search there. There might be, I might have used one computer there to bid on stuff. So they came to the business and copied that computer. So they were there. Total time they spent with me was from about 6:30 a.m. until 3 in the afternoon, copying hard drives and stuff. If I was smart, I would have just told them, okay, any of these hard drives at my business I could have used for that, because I have thousands of hard drives here with the business I'm in. But it wouldn't have served any purpose other than being kind of funny. But during the drive between the house and here, I was in my vehicle, they were in theirs. I think I'd finally talked to my mom, and she talked to her boss, who used to be a criminal defense attorney, and he, he told me don't talk to him. I was like, well, kind of a little late for that. I've been talking to him for hours now. So, anyways, at that point, he started giving me some referrals for attorneys to talk to, and started with an attorney here in Dallas who worked at a boutique firm and had handled some antitrust cases in I think a Ready Ice antitrust case before, when they were price fixing. And then we found out everything was going to be in Minnesota, because the website that we bid on the computers on was based out of Minneapolis. So all the charges were coming out of the Minneapolis federal court. So then he worked on getting me some referrals in Minneapolis, and found an attorney up there that was good, that I liked, and we started proceeding from there. I hired John Marty with Dorsey and Whitney, and so John was the primary on the case, and Alex Santos was a secondary, so he'd pass stuff off to him, so it wouldn't be quite as expensive on me. But John Marty previously was the acting U.S. attorney there in Minneapolis for a while, And so he really knew the connections, knew the judge, knew, really knew what was going on. Even though everybody on this case, pretty much wasn't. The attorneys on this case were out of Chicago, other than the principal, U.S. attorney filing the charges there. But the DOJ Antitrust Division office in Chicago is the ones that were prosecuting it in Minnesota. So he didn't know those particular attorneys, but he knew plenty of people. So first thing he did was set up a meeting for a Zoom. So Dorsey and Whitney has the Dallas office, so we went to the Dallas office, and I went to the Dallas office and Zoomed them to meet them and discuss the case a little bit before finally signing on with them and sending in the retainer. So the previous lady that I'd talked to in Dallas, said basically to start with is going to be $50,000. Dorsey ended up taking a $10,000 retainer, and we worked against that, and total throughout the whole thing, it was probably right around $50,000 in attorney's fees. So John contacted the GSA Office of the Inspector General, set up a proffer for me to meet with them in Minneapolis with him, and we discussed the case with them, and I guess everything that's used in a proffer can't be used against you. So this is basically when they're trying to decide if they wanted to do a cooperation agreement with me. So that was probably like September of 2018, and we made that agreement to work with the government in this case. So throughout that, if they had any questions or anything, needed to talk to me, they were able to, and I ended up pleading guilty in April of 2019. So once again, this is one of the times that the government issued a press release in the matter, and they, after this, they were silent as far as press releases on me. So they, this press release looked good for them because it was me doing a guilty plea, and in that press release they mentioned that it could be up to 10 years in prison or $1 million fine. So that looks real good on a press release, especially if you're fighting to keep people in the office.
So in April of 2019, I pled guilty to Sherman Act violation, which the government in their press release said could be up to 10 years in prison and a $1 million fine. So that looked real good for the government, and that's why they issued that press release there. After that, I was released on my own recognizance and met with the pretrial probation officer.